So, welcome. Today I invited three young people from the youth program of the Climate Change and Consciousness Conference here in Findhorn, and I'm very curious how their day was. Maggie, you survived a wildfire, like when your house burned down in Australia, where you live, when you were 8. And we'll talk about it in a minute, but first, like, what was the highlight of your day today?
I think the highlight of my day today has been hanging out with the rest of the youth here. We had a really wonderful conversation after this morning's fishbowl, and it was really connecting, and that was wonderful and really fun too.
Cool. And Finn, you went to alternative schooling, and we'll talk about it also today. What was your highlight of the day?
I'd have to echo that and definitely say it was talking within the whole group of teens, and we were kind of, someone would say something and everyone would go, yeah, that is. And then after that we kind of planned, but also felt very spontaneous, played a bunch of drama improv games and just laughing nonstop, like just constant laughter, and then laughter at laughter, and it just was amazing.
Cool, that sounds like fun. So, Whakaritaua, you know both the Maori culture and the modern culture in New Zealand, because you're a Maori. What was your highlight of the day?
It was definitely expressing our thoughts and opinions and our feelings as youth this morning. That was very important and, very good to share.
So all of the three of you had this highlight, because after the tea break this morning, you kind of, as the youth program, you got the floor, and you had a conversation with the chairs, and the adults were listening while the youth was having a conversation. Can you share a bit like what happened there and why you liked it?
Was that we found really good. Well, I found really good, but actually after that we had a conversation.
It was after
about that conversation that I think we all it felt like we bonded over in a way, because we had sort of like, I guess, complaints and visions and sort of this sort of thing, and it was really nice to hear that we're all kind of thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Maggie?
The same. That was the thing that I was talking about. I did really enjoy parts of the fishbowl. I think that the use of the microphone, that we had to have a microphone to speak, meant that it felt less like a conversation and more like a series of presentations, which was not the intention that we were going in with.
And was it just the bonding, or was also like coming something out of the conversation you had afterwards?
I think it was really nice to just be heard and listened to. We were kind of, a couple of people in the room were like, well, why don't we do this, and should we express it to the larger community? And I personally felt like this is enough for me.
Okay, cool. That sounds like a good experience afterwards. So Maggie, let's go to your story.
Okay.
You survived
2009 bushfires when I was 8 years old. And so you want the story of
Yeah,
that?
please, can you tell what happened there?
So it had been a really hot week and of temperatures over 40 degrees Celsius for that entire week, and everything had been drying up, and that had been continuing for decades, and I'd woken up in the morning and I'd felt really, really ill because of the heat. And that day it was 56 degrees Celsius, I'm pretty sure. And we were trying to look after our home. We had chickens. We were trying to look after them as well because of the heat. And we had the radio on, and we were hearing stuff about fires off in the distance near highways, very far off. And, the day continued like that for quite a long time. And we'd prepared the house. We'd put water in the gutters. We had a blown up swimming pool out the back that had water in it. We'd had water prepared just in case we got caught out. But in vain. On the radio, we heard this woman who had was watching her house burn down in, I think, Hillsville or Marysville, which was just down the mountain from where we were, and that was our first warning that it was actually coming our way and it was actually going to affect us. And about 5 minutes after that, the sky went black, pitch black, and these ginormous embers started raining down from the sky, like metre-long pieces of bark that were on fire just fell like onto the rooftops, on our heads, everywhere. And my mum said, we're not going to get out in time. We should go and find friends who... we had friends who had a 4-year-old child, a pregnant mother, and a father. And my mum's thoughts were 4 adults and 2 children is a much more defendable position than 2 adults and 1 child. So we got in the car, and their house is like 5 minutes from ours. We got there, and as I was in the car, I could see the fire being spread by these embers, lighting up, just everything bursting into flame almost all around us. And as we reached their house, we could see the fire front reaching this row of pines in the distance. And we tried, we rushed into their house, but we couldn't shut the door. And while we were trying and struggling to shut the door, their dog ran out into the firestorm. And you said before, a wildfire. It wasn't. It was more than a wildfire. It was a firestorm. And so we managed to shut the door, and the front of the fire swept over the house. To the surprise of neighbours and other communities, there were actually 2 fronts to this fire. There were so many winds that day that it meant that the wind brought fire from multiple directions. So people got caught out within this fire, thinking that the first front of the fire had passed its time to get out of their homes, and they got caught in the second front.
And you survived the fire?
Yeah, I did.
How did that happen?
We were in this, I think the house was a little mud brick at the time, but they were on a ridge, so we were inside, and I'd gone into Ollie's bedroom, who was the little kid, and we huddled down really low and had these woolen blankets over our heads, and the front went over, and then we tried to defend the house, but when we tried to use the water from the taps, we'd found out that their plastic watering tank had melted, and so we had no water. And then we had a limited amount of water from the bath, and we tried to defend the house with that, and that just wasn't enough. And slowly we kept retreating into a smaller part of the house. My dad and Ollie's dad went out the back to try and get water onto the roof, but their lead light started dripping plastic onto their faces and onto their heads, so they came back inside. And this was after the fronts of the fire, so everything was burning, but at least it wasn't a wave of fire. And so we, Mum and I and Ollie were huddled on the ground, and I remember my mum shaking me, going, "Are you still alive?" And I think my main thing was that I was trying to be a calming influence to Ollie, but it was kind of like a rabbit in the headlights. I was terrified. My mum said, we've got to get out, and as this house was collapsing around us, we exited the front door, and I remember having this blanket over my head, seeing like everything burning around me, and we luckily their car was behind our car, which was like this old car that was more fire resistant than theirs, which had plastic. So theirs was partly melted, while ours was like survived the fronts. and we all got in our cars and we all drove into this town centre. But as this was happening, there was this massive log that fell, or tree branch that fell right in front of our car. We had to swerve round, and we all got together into the community centre, and people from all over the town had come to this centre of the town, and people had broken into the pub to get water and to get soft drinks for the kids and for anyone who needed that. The doctors who was in the area, she set up, get it ready to anyone who was coming in.
And there were you able to stay long enough to survive the fire till the fire was gone?
That was within the house, yeah. We stayed there.
So the fire was already gone when you were in the pub or when you were in the community centre?
When we were in this community green area, everywhere around us was burning, but it had almost already burnt.
Okay.
That's
so the extreme heat of the fire
the extreme.
was over.
It just ripped through everything. So it charred everything within an instant.
Did that change something about like how you looked at climate change? Or? Yeah, very much. It made it more urgent and more of a panic for me, and it made it the fear of that will probably happen again in my hometown. My home is very much drying up, and if there is another fire within 20 years of that fire in that town, our soil won't really survive it. It will make it even less likely to regenerate and be able to be more fire resistant because of the lack of biodiversity that returned and the lack of care that we did in regenerating the land, which is something that Indigenous people have been doing. In Victoria especially, there were fires all around Australia. They did fires, they'd burn off so that there wouldn't be this catastrophe that happened. So for you, the urge is really big to do something about climate change. Yeah,
and I have been part of student strikes, and in my local area, I'm a very big supporter of the Great Forest National Park, which is hoping to get all of the land that's from Kinglake and all around Victoria into this national park status that will stop logging, because as much as reforestation is a thing after logging, it ends up being the same trees planted the same distance and the biodiversity, and it's not fire resistant, it's not good enough.
So you mentioned the Maoris, Whakaritaua.
Whakaritaua, yeah.
Sorry, for me it's really difficult still to pronounce. So how would you act? Like, how would you people act with this fire? Like, what kind of wisdom can you bring in?
I haven't really had many personal experiences with fires and that, but in natural disasters, our people have a certain way of acting, and it'd be the kaumatua, the elders, that would help us through that, and they would have knowledge to go through that. So I personally, myself, I haven't been exposed to any of that, and I'm very sorry that you have. You shouldn't have to grow up with that, and especially at the age of 8. So but.
So you rely on the elders, but you grow up in a Maori culture, and can you tell us a bit like why you're so grateful for being there, being brought up in that culture?
It's definitely given me so many mindsets. I have a different approach and a different whakaaro, different thought on climate change to other people, because as Tiako was saying last night in his kōrero,
Tiago is another different Maori who was here as well.
Yeah.
And who spoke last night in that conference.
Our genealogy, we all come from nature. We come from Papa Tuanuku, Earth Mother, Rangi Nui, Sky Father, and all the guardians and gods in between. So when one falls out or when one's being affected, that that's our tupuna, our ancestors who are hurting and who are paying the price for our actions. And I'm so grateful to have grown up in a community where I was taught how to treat nature and how to respect it, because it's provided me with the ability to reflect, and it's provided me with the ability to connect. And I think those are two very important factors that we all need, especially within today's day and age.
Can you tell a bit more about this connection with nature you have? And how is it, because you also went to school, into a modern school, so you know the both, like, you know, modern culture and you know the Maori culture. Like, what is the different way in connecting with nature?
Well, for me, my personal connection with nature has been going back. So going back to Papatūānuku and just talking to her and say, I'm so sorry that you're hurting. I'm sorry, Mama. We shouldn't have done this to you. And I've got this harakeke, a flax bush, and underneath it, my parents,
this is like a bush in your space.
Yeah, so it's a harakeke, like a flax bush, and underneath my placenta. So when I was born, it was placed underneath, and a plant was placed on top, so that it could grow with me, and I could always rely on it to be there for me. So I talked to my harakeke a lot. And one of the greatest challenges that it helped me through was actually when my koko passed away, my great-grandfather. I went back and I just cried for hours, and I just talked to it. And that was a lot of my healing, was being able to have it there support me. And I actually cut a few of the leaves off the harakeke. I made flowers out of it, and that went down to earth with my koko. So that sort of connection, you don't get taught that in school. In my modern school, it's, as much as I love my school, it's quite different. And I think it's good to have a good balance between education and knowledge, because there's education, you can learn maths, English, and you can do what you love, but you also need an understanding and an education of nature, because without it, you know, they intertwine, they go hand in hand, and one can't rely without the other. So.
And if you would have to taught me to develop my connection with nature, what would you advise me?
I would definitely tell you to go back to nature. Just go. And what I've heard a lot this week so far is just to go and sit and be one. Just very.
How do I do that?
Everyone has their own techniques, but for me, I'm trying to be better with meditation, working on that. But I like to just sit and talk. Some like to just close their eyes and listen to everything going around, all the birds and insects, and it's finding what's right for you and how you connect with your land and how you connect to your tupuna, your ancestors.
But how do you listen? Do you hear something, or do you feel something in your body, or like what is how is it?
For me, it's a overwhelming sense of peace. I can feel it coming from the ground, and it comes up and over, and I look up and I can feel my tupuna, my ancestors watching over and saying, we've got your back, and we're going to help you through it. That's why I connect back anyway.
It's like an intimacy with everything around you, and also with your past, with your ancestors.
Definitely.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Finn, you come from a different part of the world, from Ireland. How do you relate to this?
I don't think I can. I think everyone has their each individual stories. I think I can talk about my connection to nature and those things, but it just seems so unique in their world. And something I've realized, and I was talking to a friend about, was that Ireland has kind of lost its connection. It's indigenous people, its culture, like we're original, like Celtic people, and just like Irish itself, the language is a dying language, and it's because it's how it's taught in school. Everyone is taught how to hate it, basically. And it's, you know, religion is a big part in Ireland, and it is also dying, but it also has, like, the church has a lot of rule over the country and that kind of thing, and it's just, it makes me very envious of stories like these where it just seems a lot more connected to nature. And I was lucky enough to have parents who love nature, and I grew up with an organic farm in my life. I didn't grow up on the farm. I stayed there a couple of years here and there, but that was in my life, and that was wonderful.
Because you went to an alternative school, not the normal schooling.
Yeah,
that you have
so
in Ireland. Did you got any? Did you were you taught any connection with nature or?
So from the way the Irish school system works is you have junior infants, senior infants, and then you start school around 4 or 5, and then you have first class to sixth class, and then first year to first year to sixth year, and then you go to college or whatever you want to do. I went all the way through the primary school system, and then in secondary school I did first and second year, and then I just didn't like it. I didn't fit in. It just wasn't for me. And it is for some people, but it definitely wasn't for me. And in my school that I go to, it's a Sudbury school, so everyone has equal vote. Mixed age learning, a 7-year-old has just as much power as a 70-year-old, just as much authority, just as much consideration in their opinion. And so we come together as community to make decisions as all ages. And what was your question again? Sorry.
Yeah, if you learned anything about this connection with nature, because I think it's way more connected with each other and like respecting the wholeness of life.
Yeah, we have one staff member who is constantly wanting us to go outside, and the beauty is we can. I remember so many memories of sitting in a massive, my mainstream school had 1,000 people sitting in that building doing an exam in this massive exam hall with another 1,000 people or just my year, and the doors would be open to sunlight and grass fields and running around and people playing football, and we would have to sit there and do our exam, and there was like a teacher, almost like a defender, a bodyguard of that, like that we couldn't connect with nature, and it just broke some sort of connection. And in our school we're encouraged to go outside. In my Sudbury school, that the door is always open to leave, to go on a walk, to do whatever you want. We have a beautiful river near our school that we call the magical faraway place, and you regain that connection with nature, I think, when in my school.
Beautiful. So you're all here in Findhorn, taking part in the youth program. Can you say a bit like how is it to be here with all those young people? Like what's the vibe in the group? And
it's quite inspiring, because when you're from a place where you don't always feel that people have the same message and the same passion as you, it can be quite heartbreaking and you lose a lot of hope. And so it's amazing to come here and be around people who have the same ambitions and have the same purpose as you. And
how would you describe that purpose, that same ambition?
It's not selfish. It's not a place out of selfish intent, or you're here for a greater cause. You're here for future generations, and you're here for your land and your people and wherever you're from. Whereas I don't really know how to word it properly.
Maggie or Finn, any?
Oh yeah, no, it is a privilege to be able to speak with other people my age, or even younger, but like and have these dynamic and amazing conversations about our planet and how much we care, and to be part of talk to people who have been labelled snowflakes and all of that for actually caring. But yeah, it's wonderful, and it's a passion, and it makes you want to do more and experience more and connect more.
I think something I've noticed about adults is they talk a lot. And as a child, everything's simple. Then it gets a little more articulated as a teenager, and then everything's just kind of complicated in words for an adult, I think. And it's so wonderful to share a place with teenagers where afterwards we sort of talk about the talks and things we've heard, and it just allows the space to, you know, reflect and actually kind of take it in. But like, I know, like, I've loved so many of the talks here, and I'm not like calling out all adults and saying they're bad, but it's just, there's a level of simplicity that, you know, we have comedy on our minds. We're making jokes all the time. We're making it engaging and funny, and just the conversations flow where we've got like our agenda, our beliefs and our things. We have our culture, our story. There's just so much that I believe in a sharing that kind of way that I really just love about the youth that have been here. And I don't know, I think it's been so wonderful to be not alone, because I've been to things before like this, or like things where I show up and I'm the only sort of 16-year-old, the only 18 and under kind of person, and I'm just like, they're like, oh wow, here's our youth person, here's the thing, and it feels very like alone, and like I have all these thoughts and I don't really want to share them with maybe other adults, but I can share them with these people, and it feels really nice.
Yeah.
It's nice having people around your age, like 18, 17, going on 18 and 16. So it's nice being able to, you know, relate to each other, because, and we're all experiencing similar things, and we're all going through similar things and emotions and teenagehood in itself. So
a lot of recognition.
Yeah.
We talked about this as well, about how there is a huge difference between, you know, us and sort of everyone above kind of 20. And that is, well, one, puberty. Our emotions and hormones are all over the place. Two, we've been born into a world that we already know has like an expiry date, or that people keep telling us. I'm still very hopeful, but people keep telling us. And three, that we've had to deal with it. We have to deal with it, but at the same time I feel very confused, very lost, very, you know, and to be able to share that, to be like, look, I feel very lost too, and I feel very lost too, and just really...
Yeah, I got a call from one of my friends just the other day, and she couldn't get to sleep because she had the stress of school and having to do exams and having to get a 98er, so she's got a scholarship, while she hadn't been doing her holiday homework because she'd been so busy trying to campaign for climate action in Australia. And I know that going back to school, her teachers won't listen to that, and they won't respect that, and neither will the government, and neither will all this stuff. But she's doing stuff, and I think that should be rewarded. And
I speak very strongly that anyone should not have to do something they do not want to do. I find school day in, day out don't give you the choice. Don't give you the choice of what you want to do. If you don't know what you don't want, if you don't know what you want to do, you don't know who you are. Time and time again, I have my mainstream school friends like, I don't know what to do, I'll just kind of thing. And it's so important to me. Like, we had a conversation in lunch, and one of the teenagers asked, do we have to go to this workshop? You know, because their youth leaders were saying which workshops they could take off and thing. And I just went, you have choice in everything you do. You do not have to do anything. Everything is a choice. And I hate that a lot of schools don't give you that choice. And it's you know, it's a hard time to act now. It's our time to be like, look, we're not doing our math homework. We're saving the planet you broke.
Yeah.
So if there will be, like, because you have been together now half a week, if there would be like one thing you would like to take from this, or what you would like to change in the world, what would it be? What can you... Finn? Or I thought you had
Yeah,
the
yeah.
answer already.
I definitely I can't remember his name. The person who is on the Zoom call, the 18-year-old who does rap. What's his name?
Yes, he's a very complicated name. I think you're the most likely one who knows how to pronounce it. But
I'd hate to butcher his name because I know how it feels when your name's butchered. So
okay.
Anyway,
I'll practice.
you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He gave me such a, because all the adults were talking about sort of kind of really despairing, depressing things that was really hard to hear, and I know that I want to hear them regardless. They're saying the world is going to be irreversible in 12 years. There's this, that, the other. And to hear his story, and the biggest message I got was, think globally, act locally, and locally will affect globally. Because we're in the day of social media and that's one thing. You can do something local and you can change your small tiny village of 20 people or your town of 20,000 people. Change that and then, put it on Snapchat, put it on Instagram, that kind of thing, and people will know about it, and that affects the world. And it just really inspired me to, I don't really feel like I have a hometown because I move so much, but wherever I choose, maybe where my school is, I want to act locally, and the world will help me because there's so many communities around the world that will be like, we'll help you, and here's what we came up with this problem.
Whakaritaua?
I personally feel a lot of the same way. I very much enjoyed that talk this morning because I feel like I've had a similar, definitely not the same at all, but had a similar upbringing and similar whakaaro thoughts as Indigenous. So, I think I was probably 8 when I first stood up in a room of elders and that, and I said, I really would like my voice to be heard, and I don't mean it as a sign of disrespect, and it is out of love that I say, this is how I'm feeling. And it's hard to stand up, and I think as youth we kind of need that courage, and we need people to be our role models, and to say it's okay to stand up, and it's okay if you're mocked in school or something for your passion, because whatever your passion is, you need to do that, and you need to find a way to turn, once you've found your passion, find a way to turn it into an action which can help everyone, help the world. And
Yes. Maggie, any
The
thoughts?
passion is a really important thing. I'm at the moment just started studying at the National Theatre Company in Australia, and part of my passion is to be able to create and deliver a new type of story to a new audience that, brings together the global emergency but also the global coming together. And so
follow your passion,
yeah.
act, and do what you like, and stand up for the world.
Yeah, I love how he raps because
Yeah, it's nice. I like at the end.
as a little secret, I'll tell everyone. I write little raps or poems in my book, and I don't share them with everyone because I don't really have that courage yet. But it's an amazing way to just express how you're feeling, because a lot of the pain that we face and a lot of that pressure and responsibility is left to us, and it's just a heavy burden most of the time. So you need to find a way that you can lift it off your shoulders and express it.
Yeah. Well, I hope you will continue with expressing and following your passion. And I'm really grateful that you're here in Findhorn and also part of this daily conference update. So thank you for participating. And this was our daily conference update. So tomorrow we are again with another day of the conference, and at 5:30 we will be here with 3 new guests. And I hope you watch again. So thank you. Bye.